Hi, welcome to a new video where we're going to continue talking about large language models and, of course, how this has been affecting us and its relation with the current economics. So take a seat while you're driving or just cooking, working, and have this in the back while we just tell you the definition of some of these terms, what Benjamin has to say, and, of course, the AI tools that have been in between about prompt engineering.
The understanding prompt engineering, and the large language model systems. The historical contextualization suggests that Benjamin Gombe represents a figure of temporal experience and a transitional form of labor subjectivity, as we were mentioning. The gambler's suspended temporality therefore anticipates the contemporary prompt engineer's relationship to algorithmic uncertainty.
There's
And
something about uncertainty that really catches my mind, especially with the breadth system and prompt engineering. We started making prompts without even knowing what would the result would be. And we just started trusting some search engines and use algorithmic engines that we didn't have any clue about it. But why was that? And what's the play of uncertainty about it?
that where Benjamin's analysis remained focused on individual psychological structures, we can begin to see how gambling psychology becomes embedded in the social organization of production itself. For example, through Karpathy's notions of software 3.0, which is created through contingent generative looping and verifying out the output of the large language models. In order for us to understand prompt engineering within these longer trajectories of automation, we also need to know the importance of continuity and rupture with earlier forms of industrial organization. Fordist production sought to eliminate uncertainty through standardization, structuring workers' knowledge and delegating into machine systems designed to minimize variability. So we're trying to advance in industrialization while creating numbers that can help us to us. But we're doing it in a way that we cannot properly keep track of those and trying to figure out how to actually craft and keep on these type of models. We have from software 1.0 and then it can lead to software 2.0 using models trained on data and not written by hand and often with opaque logic, a kind of meta software. And now with the rise of large language models, we have software 3.0, generative and self-improving software that is developed in self-improving loops where humans become verifiers, creators, or collaborators with the AI, which we can call, or the authors call, human AI generation verification loop. If you want me to talk more about this, three terms or labels, let me know. Yet, even within automated factories, chance never disappear entirely. Machine operators develop embodied skills for responding to unexpected material variations that could not be fully programmed away. What about the contemporary times? We have algorithmic management representing a broader qualitative transformation of this trajectory. Like Fordist systems, AI platforms extract and codify human knowledge, but unlike their industrial predecessors, they reintroduce this knowledge in a stochastic form. The probe sorting processes characteristic of large language models or LLMs represent a novel synthesis of standardization and unpredictability. These systems simultaneously encode vast regularized knowledge whilst generating output through probabilistic sampling that cannot be predicted in advance, where Fordist productions sought to eliminate the worker's subjective relationship on the production process. Algorithmic systems depend upon cultivated new subjectivities organized around interpreting and managing computational uncertainty. The prompt engineer's labor represents the emergence of a skilled interpretative work within highly automated systems organized around a stochastic temporality rather than the repetition of standardized procedures. So we're looking to automate without having to be fully in control of the process. We also have algorithmic systems that produce prompt anxiety. It's not a complete break with industrial identity, but what Gramsci called the passive revolution. This is a transformation of productive techniques within continuing relations of domination. Gramsci argues that the corporations maintain dominance through economic control and through what we call transformism, that is, the capacity to absorb and neutralize potentially oppositional forces by incorporating them into system structures of power. Indeed, contemporary AI platforms often practice this form of technological transformation, converting user resistance and collective innovation into sources of value. Stockchain rules maintaining the appearance of technological neutrality, but on the other hand, reality can tell us something different. Having this type of pump anxiety and the sense of gambling where we are not 100% sure of the outcome of a prompt or how we need to structure prompt in order for us to have a more verifiable and more trustworthy result. To understand how this gambling psychology becomes both produced and systematically exploited, we must examine the material conditions through which AI platforms transform uncertainty into structurable value. Indeed, the arcades that Benjamin analyzed as a space of individual change encounters have developed into computational platforms that now industrialize the production of aleatory spirits. In other words, contemporary AI platforms have systematically transformed the gambling psychology. This paper identifies into source of value extraction and represents an intensification of capitalism's systematic transformation of uncertainty into value. We also need to mention that material constraints, such as compute costs, are not real. Rather, that offers place an abstraction layer over these constraints that reinforces the gambling experience rather than providing technical explanations that might enable more predictable outputs. The concept of tokens, for instance, obscures the actual computational work being performed, creating an arbitrary seeming currency that users must manage without clear understanding of what their consumption actually represents in terms of processing power or significant resources. We don't even know what we are consuming in a vertical way, but some people are expecting us to still use these models in our daily lives. AI companies currently provide almost no detail on the user's token allowance, which enables the company to change the quantitative number of tokens a user may use as only an abstract representation is provided, usually as a bar chart showing usage. Just like that. The figure at Benjamin's Lambda provides a revealing metaphor for understanding the psychological and temporal dimensions of prompt engineering. But this analysis must be extended to consider how it becomes systematically exploited by AI platforms. Drawing on Benjamin's analysis of the arcade as a commercial space that monetizes chance, we can examine how companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Midjourney have created business models that capitalize on forms of prompt anxiety. It is argued that the gambling psychology inherent in prompt engineering is often a design feature of dark matter that vector platforms encourage. For example, through limited token limits, subscription tiers, and model access that structure AI access. These mechanisms create artificial scarcity around probabilistic outputs, intensifying the gambler's temporal comprehension that Benjamin identified. The premium features that promise better outputs mirror casino VIP programs, offering the illusion of privileged access to chance. The psychological architecture of these platforms deliberately recreate the conditions that generate what Benjamin called the gambler's addiction to phantasmagories of time, and can be seen in what has come to be called Tokenmaxxing and AI model use. We have the transition of OpenAI's from unlimited GPT access to credited-based GPT-4 usage. And that's a good example of this dynamic. Users report developing elaborate strategies to ration in their monthly token allowances, whilst pursuing increasingly complex prompting strategies. Behavior that appears similar to gamblers' management of their resources under conditions of artificial scarcity. I will also mention that the idea that other people can teach you about these usages, and of course, the amount of courses offered nowadays and AI coaches promising you a well-detailed and any type of current from you to honor say AI are an advising type of trend, as well as being on the look and without missing anything, the fear of missing out, which we also touch in this channel. Markets are encouraged by these set models. We think that if we can understand anything that we actually can, we are getting behind and we will lose money. So that's like the link directly to the counter rates. Like it could be high, something that we weren't actually procure a top to start with. We are going to lose something. For example, in prom marketplaces where successful proms are bought and sold, the gambler's superstitious knowledge is transformed into commodified expertise. Research on the creativity of text-to-image generation reveals how online communities have developed elaborate systems for sharing and monetizing prompt strategies. Users search for and sometimes pay for prompts that promise to learn particular stack effects, much as gamblers purchase systems that claim to predict related outcomes. Or, as I mentioned before, another form will be the online courses that can help you to learn more about the AI systems. Sometimes it can be very educational, some others is just a way for you to spend some money without any great value in return. The commodification transforms Benjamin's lonely gander into a participant in a vast marketplace surrounding chats. What do you think about this? This commodification reaches its apex or apex in the emergence of prompt engineering as a professional role. Job description for prompt engineers frequently emphasize the ability to optimize and fine-tune prompts for consistent results. Language that marks the fundamentally aleatory nature of the systems. This professionalization represents an attempt to rationalize what Benjamin understood as essentially irrational. That is a gambler's relationship to chance. I also have to point out that the emergence of lots of roles directly related to content and building out sequences in a lot of large language models has been increasing in of the languages as well, which is something we could keep an eye on. Yet the very existence of such roles reveals capitalism's capacity to absorb and monetize even the most disruptive psychological and temporal structures. However, while it is argued that the gambler analogy it is insuggestive of these structures of feeling involved in prompt engineering, it is also meant to be used as a critical concept. Indeed, professional prompt engineers working within differing contexts may experience their practice quite differently from the effective states it is described. Where prompt engineering becomes routinized within established workflows, some merge within quality assurance processes or undertaken with access to fine-tuned models and extensive computational resources. The auditory dimension may be reduced or actively suppressed using stronger guardrails or conservative temperature settings. Similarly, users employing systematic A/B testing or working with low temperature settings that reduce stochastic variation may experience prompt engineering as more deterministic. The camera psychology is theorized here. It applies predominantly to individual users interacting with consumers facing AI platforms such as ChatGPT. Under condition of uncertainty about model behavior and with limited technical transparency. The concepts are developed in here should be before be understood as describing as a tendency within better capitalism's organization of AI interaction rather than a universal feature of full prompt engineering contents. The commodification of uncertainty can be seen as a dark pattern, showing how platforms design token scarcity into probabilistic systems. Subscription models provide monthly credits, token-based pricing that abstracts computational cost, entire access promising better outputs, appear to recreate the temporal structure of the casino West, obscuring the material conditions of algorithmic production. This represents what Benjamin called phantasmagoria, the way capitalism makes social relations appear as magical properties of objects. In AI platforms, the magic lies in the promise that the right prompt will unlock the AI's true capabilities, true verification, great results. Concealing the probabilistic nature of the system whilst encouraging users to assume that failures are due to inadequate prompting skills rather than to inherent limitation of the AI tool. Have you been lying on this? And have you been aware of this? Let me know. However, this inherent of uncertainty is not confined to subscription tiers and token pricing. But tell me, what have been your experiencing about this? And have you heard about phantasmagoria in the past? The way capitalism makes social relations appear as magical properties of objects? And now we have the same pattern with AI tools. But perhaps with every subscription-based type of model, SaaS companies, we have been facing this for quite some time. But since we're taking the time to explain how these models works, we can find out that these tools have been characterized and of course theorized for so many years now. But since we're gathering a lot of information more than we can show, we don't have the time or the space to actually consume everything at a slow pace. Thank you so much for being here. See you in another video.